Yo, what's going on, guys? Sport Fanatic, and I'm back with another schedule preview, this time of the reigning defending national champions in Clemson. Under Dabo Swinney, it looks like Clemson is going to be great for years to come, and I'm talking many years to come. So Dabo Swinney just signed a recent contract, a huge contract. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to Alabama. He's comfortable at Clemson. And why wouldn't you be? He has everything he could ever want here at Clemson. Clemson has already established its dominance, and it will continue to do so in the future. So they became the first team to go 15-0 last year, winning the national championship. So they did lose a lot of defensive talent to the draft, but they do still have a lot of offensive talent like, Justin Ross, and particularly one of the best young quarterbacks in college football, Trevor Lawrence. He had an incredible freshman season, and he is a possible Heisman contender and first overall pick in a couple years, and a Heisman contender he could be this year. And I wouldn't be shocked if Clemson did exactly what they did last year and went 15-0 and repeated it. So let's see if Clemson can do what they did last year and become undefeated and potentially even win the national championship. So Clemson starts off the year in conference play against Georgia Tech at home. Georgia Tech is going through a pretty massive rebuild right now, so I don't think Georgia Tech is going to be able to put up much fight against Clemson. It's going to be all Clemson. The crowd's going to be behind them, and Clemson's just a much better team with the much better coaching staff right now. So I think Clemson, it may be close for a first quarter or two, but Clemson's going to blow Georgia Tech out starting off the year pretty solid with a extremely big win against Georgia Tech. So moving on, they are at home again, this time against Texas A&M. So Texas A&M has put up a very good fight with Clemson over the past couple of years. I feel like the gap might be closing between Texas A&M and Clemson now that Jimbo Fisher is at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is starting to fulfill their true potential, and I am extremely high on Texas A&M this year. But do I think that they're going to be able to defeat the Clemson Tigers? No, I think Clemson's going to win this game by about one possession, at most two possessions. It's going to be a pretty close game. If I had to guess, I think it'll be like a 7-8 point win. A comfortable win for Clemson, but certainly not an easy win. I think Texas A&M will keep it really, really close for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter, Clemson might pull away with a couple touchdowns, and Clemson will find a way to get the win. So Clemson's difficult schedule continues as they head on the road for the first time this season against Syracuse. So I would pick Syracuse in this game because Clemson's coming off a big win over Texas A&M. But Syracuse did lose their starting quarterback, and even though I think Syracuse will be back to that level of being pretty good in a couple years, I think this might be one of their few down years under their really good coach as they search for a new quarterback. So I don't really think without a great quarterback they're really going to be able to legit compete with Clemson. It'll probably be a close game for the first half, and then Clemson will pull away. So I think it would be about a 3-possession win. Clemson will win it by around 17 or 20. It'll be a pretty comfortable win for Clemson. So Clemson heads back home in their first real cupcake game. It's been a difficult 3-game stretch here to start off the season for Clemson, but they survive through that, and they head back home to face Charlotte. What do I even have to say here? Clemson's obviously going to blow out Charlotte. Charlotte, from a talent perspective, is like a middle school team against an NFL team. It's just not going to be close. Let's move on. So Clemson heads back on the road to face North Carolina, another team kind of in rebuild mode. They recently hired, I'm trying to remember his name. He's kind of an older coach. I think he's been there before. They're starting to bring in some nostalgia and that type of feel back to their program, which I think is a good idea. North Carolina kind of needs a spark. They've been kind of dead since Mitchell Trubisky left them. And I think their new coach will be able to provide that and provide the excitement and the spark to this program that they desperately need. But I still think that Clemson's going to win. I mean, North Carolina's rebuilding, at least for this year. They could start getting some more wins, but those wins aren't going to come against a team like Clemson. North Carolina does have a ceiling. As much as people want to deny that, they do have a ceiling, and their ceiling is about at Clemson's floor. So I think that Clemson I mean, it may be close for the first half. Probably not. I think Clemson will just get out to a quick start, hold that lead, and win a comfortable game over North Carolina. So Clemson has a bye before going up against one of their biggest rivals, Florida State. These two have put on a lot of competition over the past couple years, but last year Clemson absolutely destroyed and demolished Florida State. And I think Florida State's going to be about as bad as they were last year. I'm not a believer in Willie Taggart at all. I think he's going to be fired at the end of the season, and Florida State just needs to move on. Just fire him, take the buyout, and just move on. Do what Florida did with Jim McElwain. It seems to be working out pretty well for them so far. So just copy Florida, have the buyout, get yourself a new coach, pay Willie Taggart what you owe him, and just move on. But Clemson, I think, is going to handle them well. It's at home, it's a rivalry game, and the talent is not even close for these two teams, and more specifically, the coaching staff could not be a farther gap between these two teams. So Clemson gets another win as they head 6-0 on the year, halfway to another undefeated season. So they head back on the road to face another team in rebuilding mode. The ACC has a lot of teams in rebuilding mode. You have teams like Georgia Tech, Louisville, Florida State, Syracuse, NC State, Wake Forest, Boston College. I mean, almost 9 or 10 of their teams are in rebuild mode. There's only a couple teams that can really compete right now. It's like Clemson, Virginia. That's really it. There's only a couple teams that are actually pretty good right now in the ACC. The ACC is a dumpster fire right now, and Clemson's what's keeping it afloat and what's keeping it an actual legit conference. But back on topic, done with the roast of the ACC, I think Clemson's going to win this game. It might be kind of a low-scoring game. Louisville might catch the worst of Clemson because Clemson isn't exactly going to be going in this game hot. They just came off probably a blowout win over Florida State, and it's on the road. So Louisville, it might actually be able to compete with them since it will probably be that ugly game. Every team has a pretty ugly game of the year where it's just kind of you have to lean on your roster, and talent alone is going to have to get you that win. I think this is going to be that game. It's going to be a low-scoring, ugly game. It's probably going to come down to the wire, honestly. But I do think Clemson's talent is good enough to defeat a team like Louisville, even though Clemson's probably playing their D or F game. But Clemson does find a way to win against Louisville. So heading back home, they face Boston College. The only time Boston College has been relevant is when they had Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. I think they're going to learn. Clemson's going to learn from their lesson after that ugly win over Louisville. They're going to come back hot. They're going to blow out Boston College. They're going to come back with a vengeance and a bang. Boston College doesn't have the talent or the coaching staff to compete with them. It's Boston College. It's Clemson. What else do I really need to say? Clemson gets the victory. So Clemson stays at home to face Wofford, kind of their last really cupcake game of the year. But then again, there are kind of some cupcake games in the in the ACC, because so many teams are in fact rebuilding. But I think Clemson's going to beat Wofford. They don't have a ton of cupcake games, so I think they take advantage of the games that they know for 100% guarantee that they are going to win. So I think Clemson blows out Wofford, obviously. So Clemson heads on the road against NC State. So I would probably give Clemson a loss either to Syracuse or NC State, considering that they're both on the road, if it was last year. But both of these teams lost their starting quarterbacks. Both teams had pretty good starting quarterbacks last year, and that's what kept these programs up near Clemson and able to compete with teams like Clemson. And now without their quarterback, I don't think that they have the talent to even hold a candle to Clemson. So I think Clemson's going to defeat NC State. Again, NC State's kind of like Syracuse. I think they'll be back to being pretty good and maybe being able to compete with teams like Clemson fairly soon. But this is just kind of another rebuilding year, which is kind of the theme for the ACC. There's tons of teams trying to get back to success, and NC State is certainly one of them. So we've reached the final two games on their schedule. Wake Forest, what more do I need to say? Wake Forest is the Vanderbilt of the ACC. They're terrible. They've never really been relevant. It's at home for Clemson. Clemson's going to pretty much wipe the floor with them. Yeah, it is kind of a middle-of-the-pack game, so it might be an ugly first-half game, but in the second half, Clemson isn't going to have another Louisville happen. They're going to, come back strong in the second half and extend their lead and comfortably beat a much more mediocre team like Wake Forest as they head to rivalry week against South Carolina on the road. So I thought about giving South Carolina the potential win here because I am pretty high on them. If you guys, and I'm not going to spoil another one of my videos, but I am pretty high on South Carolina. I think they're actually a good team just with a really hard schedule, and Clemson's one of their really hard games this year. Do I think this will be a close game? It was actually a pretty close game last year. South Carolina kind of had their way with the Clemson defense last year. Specifically Jake Bentley, and I think it will be kind of similar this year. Clemson's going to win by probably about 14 points, but I think it'll be another high-scoring game with Jake Bentley kind of picking apart this defense. But in the end, I don't think South Carolina is going to be able to stop the high-powered offense led by Trevor Lawrence. I'm a believer in Jake Bentley, but when it comes to him comparing to Trevor Lawrence, they just don't match up. Trevor Lawrence is the far superior quarterback. Even though I like Jake Bentley, there's really no competition here. So Clemson gets the win. So in back-to-back years, Clemson goes 12-0. Do I think Clemson's going to be able to go 15-0? No, I think they're going to go 14-0 and lose to Bama in the national championship for maybe the final time because Nick Saban's kind of reaching the end of his career in a couple years, and there's a lot of teams that are going to be up there on that mountain. So this is kind of going to be the last year where it will definitely be Clemson and Alabama in the national title game, in my opinion. Alabama's going to come in with a vengeance. It's certainly not going to be a blowout. I think it'll be a very close, competitive game. But in the end, Alabama's going to find a way to get the victory, probably with a last-second big play or something like that from Tua or somebody like that. But again, 15-0 with a national championship, and then the following year 14-1 and barely losing the national championship is certainly nothing to be ashamed of. Back-to-back 12-0 seasons is remarkable. Very few teams will ever do that, especially making the national title with 14-0 in back-to-back years. That is incredible. What Dabo Swinney has built here and is building here is absolutely remarkable. He's not going anywhere. Clemson fans, don't listen to the rumors. Dabo Swinney is here to stay for quite a while. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out all my other scheduled previews and just college football content as a whole. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. A lot of college football content and just overall football content coming your way. Have an amazing day, and peace.